On December 12th, Disney Plus invites you to go behind the scenes with Taylor Swift in an exclusive 6-episode docuseries.
I wanted to give something to the fans that they didn't expect. The only thing left is to close the book.
The end of an era. And don't miss Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour, the final show, featuring for the first time the Tortured Poets Department. Streaming December 12th, only on Disney Plus.
All right, y'all, come on in, grab a drink, get comfortable because it is time for One Bad Night. And if you're new here, welcome. And if you're one of my regulars, you already know the deal. I'm Tiffany, aka Detective Lightskin, and every episode I bring y'all a story about a night where somebody made one decision that turned into a whole chain of bad decisions, and by the end of the night, somebody's life is ruined. And tonight's story, y'all, when I first heard this case, I thought somebody was lying. Like, I'm talking internet rumor, urban legend. Somebody made this up for shock value type story. But then I actually sat down and started reading the case files. And y'all, I was sitting there clutching my imaginary pearls like, what the fuck? Because the decisions made in this case, just insane. Now, tonight's case is called One Bad Night. Ma'am, there's a man in your windshield. Yes. You heard me correctly, because the case we're talking about is the case of Shantae Mallard. It's often called the Windshield murder. And when I tell y'all the reason it has that nickname is going to make you pause this episode and stare at the wall for a second, because I am not exaggerating. Because this story starts with what should have been a terrible accident, but what happens afterwards, baby, that's where this story goes completely off the rails. So go ahead and settle in, because tonight I have got a story to tell y'all. And trust me, this is one of them cases you're going to be asking yourself the entire time, now, why the fuck would she do that? All right. So before we get into the absolute foolishness that happened this night, we have to talk about the victim. His name was Gregory Glenn Biggs. Now, because Gregory wasn't just some man on the side of the road like some people tried to make it seem later, the man had a whole life before this story, right? So his full name, like I said, was Gregory Glenn Biggs. He was born August 16th, 1964 in Dallas, Texas, to his parents Dale and Meredith Wortham Biggs. And from pretty much everything that people said about Greg, he had a pretty normal upbringing, nothing crazy, no wild backstory, just a regular kid growing up in Texas. So in 1982, he actually gets married to a girl named Tammy Smith. So he was 18, she was 15. Now listen, I'm not marrying my teenager off to nobody. Like, I have a 14-year-old. I couldn't imagine her getting married. I get the whole, okay, so anyway, the 80s must have been different. Like, now the girl was pregnant, okay? So that's why they got married. I don't care. I'm not marrying off my 15-year-old. Having a baby is already enough, but I'm not marrying off my 15-year-old. The child still got homework. But I guess the 80s was a very weird time. Like, I was born in the 80s, but I don't know what was going on in the 80s. So Tammy ends up having their son, Brandon, but the marriage itself did not last long. Again, they were 15 and 18. Life is messy, and the relationship ended after about a year. But the thing was, Tammy had said that she had started noticing a mental decline with Greg. So it was just like it was something she felt like she could, again, she's 15, 15, 16. What do you want the girl to do? But Greg still, like, he tried to be there for his son, be as, as involved as he could whenever he could. And it actually, eventually, he got diagnosed with bipolar disorder and mild schizophrenia. So, for real, mental health support now was a mess. So just imagine back in the 80s and 90s. Like, people were barely even talking about therapy, let alone getting people the help that they needed, right? So, like, Greg was doing the best he could with what he had. The man worked. He was trying to keep things together. Like, he had his own business. But then, unfortunately, he tried to be Captain Save a Hoe. And already know how that goes. I'm not saying she was a hoe, but I'm just saying it's a phrase. You know what I'm trying to say. So he's dating this woman, they're living together or whatever. And so at some point she needed help getting a car. So she asked Greg to co-sign. Now listen, I ain't co-signing for shit. I'm just not. And if you ever want to see somebody's life take a hard left turn financially, ask them about co-signing for somebody, right? Because that little signature will humble you so fast. So once he co-signed for that car, like I said, things went to hell. He started falling behind on the payments for his truck that he used for work because he's trying to help her over here. And then he, struggling, he loses his truck. Then he gets behind on his house payments. And before the man even realized what was happening, he done lost everything. He done lost his house, his stability. He done lost everything because he's trying to help somebody else. Like, and the poor man, like, literally ended up becoming homeless, trying to help somebody else. So, like, sometimes, like, life just be kicking you when you're down. And whew, it just be a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to give people grace. Like, and I mean, I say, and it's all because he was trying to help somebody else, which is the crazy part. Now, like I said, by 2001, Greg, he's staying at a local shelter. He just trying to, like, really trying to get his life back on track. Like, when life gives you lemons, you got to pump out some lemonade or something. So everybody, like, knew, like, he tried to be an active father as much as possible. And he was, like, really embarrassed about his situation, which, I mean, that's normal. You're human. Like, and I have to, like, things happen. And I have a really, I have, like, my heart always goes out to the homeless. Like, I have my oldest brother. He has been homeless for years. Like, and it's not due to not, he doesn't, like, I mean, it's a whole thing. But when you combine mental illness and being unhoused, like, it's a different type of, um it's harder to help them when they have mental. So I can relate to Greg and all of that. So I get it. So anyway, like, on the night of, it's October 26th, 2001, and Greg, he's finished work, he's walking back towards the shelter, minding his business. It's just another night. And this normal night was about to collide with somebody else's very bad decision. And that someone, her name is Shantae Mallard. And baby, when I tell you the decisions she made next are about to make you pause this episode and say, Tiffany, for real? Are you serious? But just wait, because we better get into all of it. Now, his story doesn't end on that highway. Because in the early morning hours of October 27, 2001, Gregory Glenn Biggs was found in Cobb Park in Fort Worth, Texas. Now, let me tell y'all something that I found out about Cobb Park. Like, it's not a cute little park where you bring your kids for a picnic and some Capri Suns. No. Cobb Park had a reputation. Like, we talking like crime, drugs, people doing all type of shady shit after dark. So when his body was found there, like, the police already knew some shit wasn't right. So it was actually an off-duty firefighter who was the one being alerted by a couple of elderly men who had come and was like, y'all need to call somebody. It's a dead body in the park over there. So, like, when investigators get there, like, they said the scene was rough. Detective Mike Hobler was one of the first detectives on the scene. And when he pulled up and he looked at Greg's body, something immediately stood out. Now, first of all, this man was covered in shards of glass. Yes, shards of glass, like, everywhere. And they said it was embedded in places like it absolutely should not have been. So they're like, okay, this is not somebody just being attacked in the park. Something else went down. So this man, they say he had tire tread marks across his body. They say his left leg was almost amputated, and then his other leg was, like, twisted in, like, some weird position, and he was laying face down in the grass. Now, when they found him, he was wearing a gray sport coat, a green shirt, khaki pants, and a sweatshirt. Now, Greg still had his wallet and ID on him, so it wasn't a robbery. So they're like, okay. They got injuries, glass, tire marks. So they're like, okay, so this probably had something to do with a vehicle. But they probably can't even fathom what the hell how this story actually came about. So at this point, Greg's son, remember we told you he had a son, his name was Brandon. He's 20 at the time. And he was the only next of kin that Greg had. So yeah, he had to take the burden of preparing this with his father and his funeral and all of that stuff. So at this point, the police, they have no freaking idea. They don't have a lead. They have nothing. Not a license plate, not a witness, just nothing. And remember, this is 2001. This isn't 2026 where there's a camera on every gas station, light, doorbell camera. Like if nobody saw you, you may as well have been a ghost. So they got to try and piece all this together. Like they know he was probably hit by a car somewhere, but they don't know where, they don't know when, they don't know who did it, and then they don't know how this body ended up dumped in this park. So the case is like a huge question mark at this point, and the police are trying to figure out what's happening. And Brandon is preparing to bury his daddy. So he buried him on October 31st, 2001. Like, I don't know. And I don't think I said it, but Greg was white. Do they bury people that fast? Like, cause black people, we need 7 to 10 business days because you gotta call the people, they gotta make arrangements, it's be a whole lot when black people die. Like that is, I'm like, that's a very quick way to bury somebody. Like I said, black people, we can't bury nobody that fast. Like they said, like the funeral was like really small, like literally like a handful of people. But anyway, at this point, like we said, they got nothing. So whoever did this, we know, as Sean said, this chick just, just walking around, minding her business. So let's talk about Shantae for a minute. Now, Shantae was born June 22nd, 1976. She's the youngest of 3 kids, and she's the only girl. And if you grew up in a house with brothers and you're the only daughter, you already know. Like my daughter, she has 4 brothers, the whole thing. She's the only girl, and yeah. So she's spoiled. That's the baby, the princess, the daddy's girl. So her parents were James Mallard Sr. and Dorothy Mallard, and they were a church family. And I'm not talking about the show up on Easter and Christmas church. I'm talking about church. Like they was at Sunday service, the events, they was helping for the programs. So you get the picture. And like people always say, like Shantae was quiet, she's reserved, well-mannered. The kind of girl, like she wasn't loud or dramatic. Like she volunteered at the church nursery. She helped with the little kids. She was in marching band. She played the saxophone and clarinet. And she even helped out as a trainer for the boys soccer team. So like I said, sounds pretty normal, right? She graduates from Hyatt High School in 94, goes to Tarrant County Junior College to become a CNA. Now, for those of y'all who don't know, that is a certified nursing assistant, which means she's working in healthcare. Keep that in mind for later. So again, everything about her life at this point is giving quiet church girl, just trying to, get out on her own. And then things started getting a little messy. When she was just 19, and I feel like this is maybe a little bit too much responsibility to put on a 19-year-old, her parents actually helped her buy a house, like a whole house. And the house was at 3840 Wilbarger Road. And back then it was worth about $20,000. So she might have had a nice little house, nice little, this just her. So, but I get it. If you can help your kid out, I mean, I completely get it. But sometimes kids aren't necessarily ready. But I mean, I guess sometimes you just got to jump in and let them do what they do. So, I said it, me at 21, I already had a kid and I'm like kind of settled, but she's not. So, poor thing had a spending problem. Like, and now she got mortgage payments, she got bills, responsibilities, all that grown up stuff. But she still wanted to live like she's in her early 20s with no responsibility. Like she's used to her parents paying for everything. And then the girl had she like smoking a little weed sometimes. Okay, not a little bit. She's like smoking a lot. Like they said she was smoking all the time, like morning, noon, night. Like the girl rolled out of bed and had to hit it. Like they said the girl would go to work high as giraffe coochie. Okay, like she just like that was her thing. But like if you work in healthcare, they will randomly drug test the hell out of your ass. Like you be minding your business, charging a patient, they be like, "Hey, we need you to come pee in this cup," and you be like, "Damn." So, and if that test come back positive, like your career is about to end immediately. That's it. You're done. So instead of just like not smoking before work, she starts to trying to beat the test. They said at one point this girl was adding bleach to her urine samples. Bleach, which people used to think could destroy drugs in the testing, but labs can usually tell when you've done that. So then she was like, well, I'll use somebody else's pee. Now my thing is, I know people do that and whatnot, but my thing is this. I don't want to walk around holding someone else's pee. I never even I don't like, and I worked in the medical field for years. I didn't like grabbing somebody's pee to test it, okay? So I'm not going to be sitting here walking around with somebody else's pee to pass a drug test. It's just not that serious to me, but to each his own. So I said, she's making decent money and she should be making enough to pay her bills. But again, she's young, she's impulsive. that's all. I'm just gonna leave it at that. She's young and impulsive with grown up responsibilities. So at one point, like, this girl moves out of her house and moves in with her friend and her friend's husband because she just said she was struggling to keep up on bills. Like, I'm not sure exactly what I was supposed to do. Just because you leave the house, your bills don't stop. But again, we're talking about, to me, she's still a child. At 19, 20, you're still a child. And I can attest to this because my 20-year-old, like, he thinks he's grown, but then he still has to call, like, okay, so how do I do this? They're adults, but they're not real adults just yet. So she was talking about renting out her house so she could catch up on some bills, and she didn't want to have to keep running back to her parents because her parents like bail her out every single time, she ran into a little issue or whatever. Now, by the time 2001 rolls around, that little quiet church girl, things are starting to like crack just a little bit. She started drinking, she started smoking, like all that. But, and that's fine, live your life. You're young, enjoy yourself. But it's the actions of her consequences, because we're going to fast forward to like 2001, October 26th. After drinking and smoking and already making a few questionable decisions, Shantae decides to get behind the wheel of the car. And what happens next is the reason that this case is known as the Windshield murder. And when I tell y'all what happened on this highway, y'all gonna be sitting there like, please be serious. Now remember, at this point, police are completely stuck because Greg has been buried. His son Brandon still doesn't know what happened to his father, and detectives have nothing. At this point, like, months are going by. The case is just basically sitting there, like, hoping something turns up. Because this is one thing about people. Y'all talk too much. I can't stand somebody that talks too much. Be quiet. What we talk about, shut the fuck up, is free. Yeah. So look, at some point after this happens, Shantae's at a party. She's hanging out, she's drinking, talking, and somehow the conversations turned into what had happened that night. And Shantae decides she wants to have a story time, like on TikTok. Like, she gets up there like, oh, I have a story to tell y'all. Now imagine you being at a party, you minding your business, you sitting there with your red cup, chilling, laughing, joking, and somebody starts telling you casually a story about how they hit a man. But wait, it gets worse. Shantae's talking about the man that she hit actually ended up stuck in her windshield. Yeah. So mind you, you chilling, you might be a little tipsy. You like, she ain't just say that. And then she like, yeah, like, I hit this man and he was hanging on my windshield and I drove home. You did what? So they like, wait a minute. They like, hold on. Let me process this. So Greg's death had been in the news because people knew that a man had been found dead with injuries from a car. So this person, again, loose lips sink ships. She went to the police and she like, let me tell y'all what I heard when I was at this party. And they were like, what? So they're like, okay. But hold on, we're gonna pivot back to the investigation for just a second. Because while detectives were sitting there with no leads, the medical examiners also trying to make sense of Greg's death. So the autopsy was first completed. The manner of death was listed as pending, which means they were like, okay, something happened, but we don't have enough information yet to officially call it. And remember, they didn't know where Greg had been hit, who hit him, or how his body just ended up in that park. So the case was just sitting. So on January 7, 2002, when nothing new had surfaced, the ME ended up changing the ruling to undetermined, which is basically the official way of saying we know this man didn't just die naturally, but we still don't know exactly what happened. So then we're going to fast forward a little bit further to February 26, 2002. Remember, they got this tip now because sis spilled all the beans. She told them exactly who was telling the story. So about a dozen police officers show up at Shantae Mallard's front door with a search warrant. Like, they brought the whole squad. This girl opens up that door. She's wearing a robe and she see all them people, all them officers standing there. And baby, she immediately starts spiraling like an Arby's curly fry. Before the police could even get anything out, she like, look, I am not a bad person. It just happened so fast. I ain't never had a speeding ticket. Ma'am, nobody even asked you anything yet. But the detectives, they already had some tea. So they like, well, we just need to hear the rest of it. So they're like, hey, can you come down to the station, give us a statement? She's like, I'll come down. I don't know if the girl thought like, I can just tell them what happened and it'll be okay. But when she sat down and started talking, child, y'all, this story gets crazy. So she like, look, I was driving along US 287 near Loop 820 and I hit a man. Okay, accidents happen, but go ahead, keep talking. And she says, quote, when I hit him, there was a very loud noise, and then all this glass started flying in the car, followed by a lot of wind, and the glass was cutting my skin and stabbing me. They're like, okay. So they're nodding and writing. Then she says she gets off at Village Creek Road. And that's when she finally realizes what actually happened because when she looks down, there's a half a man inside her car. Inside, not beside, not on the road, but inside, folded down under the dashboard with one leg sticking out through the windshield. Now pause. Because if you're driving and suddenly there's a human being hanging halfway in your vehicle, I mean, your next move is pretty obvious, right? You're going to pull over, maybe call 911, scream for help. I don't know, something. You're going to do something. And she says, because I would be confused too. She said she didn't know what to do. She said, quote, I didn't know what to think. I was scared and I didn't know what to do. I was asking God to tell me what to do. Now, ma'am, we are not going to bring Black Jesus into this because I am very confident he did not tell you, girl, go home. But that's exactly what she did. And we're not going to blame that on Black Jesus. We are absolutely not going to do that. So she keeps driving down the road with a man stuck in her windshield. And she says she actually stops at a stop sign on Martin Street. She got out of the car and touches this man's leg. And then she panics even more. So again, you would think like, okay, maybe she's going to stop. And remember, she's a CNA. She has some type of medical training, right? Okay. So you would think at this point, she's like, dang, maybe I should try and help. Call 911. Do something. No, that is not what she does. She gets back in the car and she keeps driving. And then she tells the detective that made the whole situation 10 times worse. She's like, I heard the man moan. So that means he was still alive, breathing. And then she said, quote, when I heard him moan, I looked and his leg was in the car. So we're going to run this back. You hit a man. He's stuck in your windshield. You hear him moaning, so that means he's alive. And instead of driving to maybe a hospital, at the very least, a fire station, a police station, anywhere that people have phones, because again, 2001, everybody didn't have a cell phone then. Got it. Okay. But instead, you decide to drive home. And you would think, hey, maybe she's going to drive home and call 911. No, that's not what happens. What she does is when she gets home, she pulls into her driveway, she opens the garage, she puts her car inside and closes the garage door. With Greg Biggs still stuck in the windshield. And yes, he is still alive. Now, at this point, the detectives in that room are probably sitting there like, ma'am, you cannot possibly think this is about to sound better. You just cannot. So they like, okay, you know what? They like, hold on. Like, let's back up for a second because we need some context. So where were you coming from? She said, well, I was on my way home. Me and my girl had went out to a club or whatever. So they like, then she's like, well, I was feeling a little weird. So she was like, well, I was drinking, but I wasn't drinking a lot. But she's like, but I felt off. And I think maybe somebody slipped something in my drink. So basically, now you're saying somebody drugged you. Okay. Somebody possibly drugged you. Okay. So they're like, okay. So we've suddenly gone from I hit a man in panic to maybe somebody drugged me. All right. And this is the beginning of what we call the excuses tour. Because when people start throwing in extra details, detectives start thinking like, okay, so now you're trying to soften the story. But the problem for Shantae is the story you already told is bad enough by itself. So they're like, okay, just keep going. So Shantae was like, okay, so I get home, I park in the garage, I go inside the house, and then I just collapse on the floor and I'm crying. Like I'm having a full-on meltdown. Like I'm a toddler having a tantrum, kicking my legs and feet. She said she didn't know what to do because she was scared, she was panicking. So again, she's like, oh, I'm gonna call somebody. No, she did not call 911. She calls her best friend in her name, and I'm probably about to butcher this, but I cannot pronounce it to save my life. It looks like Tennessee, like Mississippi with all these LSSE. Tillissee? It's spelled Titillissee. Right, we gonna call her T. We just gonna do it like that because, yeah, we're not gonna keep doing that. So she like, girl, I need help and I don't know what to do. And I mean, understandable. You're scared. You don't know what to do. But she says she's scared of getting in trouble with her parents and the law. Plausible. But at this point, there's a whole man in your garage stuck in a windshield. Okay. Right? All right. So T comes over to the house, and when she gets there and she sees the situation in the garage, can you imagine your best friend calling you? You thinking like something didn't happen. It's already late. Like it's like 3:30 in the morning. So you like, thinking something is wrong. So you rushing over to your friend, and she got a whole human lodged in her windshield in her garage. Like, what do you even what do you even say to that? Like, stop! Don't call me for bullshit like this. Like, do not call me. So then Shantae has a bright idea. I'm gonna call my boo thing Vaughn, and he's gonna help. So they start riding around from they calling his phone and driving past his house. They trying to find him, but he's not answering. They don't know where the man is. It's probably he don't have a cell phone because again, this is 2001. So after they're driving around or whatever, they eventually give up and they go to T's house. Not Shantae's house. They go to T's house. And I'll give it to T. She actually did suggest calling 911 and she said Shantae didn't want to. Okay. So Shantae stays with T's house for the rest of the night. And then the next morning, Shantae actually takes T's car because, her car has a whole man in the windshield. And that man is still in her windshield. Oh my gosh. So they like, okay, we need to talk to this T girl because clearly Miss T knows something. And they go track her down. And they sit her down and they like, look, you want to be an accessory to murder? She like, absolutely the fuck not. She like, look, I ain't hit nobody. I ain't killed nobody. And I am not going down for this. And I don't blame her. So they bring her in. Like I said, she started talking. But there's a problem because, like we said, Shantae and T keep mentioning his boyfriend, Vaughn. And they're like, okay, that's cool. But who was Vaughn? So they like searching through records, trying to figure out who this man is. Like, and they cannot find anything. So now we got just some mystery man named Vaughn floating around this story like a ghost. So they're like, okay, well, we'll deal with Vaughn later. But we need to go back and look at it. They were looking at the garage after they had arrested her, right? Because while all this is going on, there's a detective at the house, and they had looked in the garage. Do y'all know that damn car was still sitting in the garage? Now, mind you, they came up to her house in February of 2002. This happened in October 2001. Girl, why you ain't take that car to nobody's shop? If you're gonna commit a crime, why would you have the car, the murder weapon just sitting in your garage? Just
How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Tap the banner or visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
LifeLock, how can I help?
The IRS said I
filed my return,
but I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though. I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Child, not too bright. So they like, okay. Whoo, that car was looking raggedy. And mind you, look, the passenger seat is missing out of the car, okay? And there's blood still inside the car. So you didn't even try to clean the car out. The windshield is completely shattered. So you're like, man, what exactly were you doing in this car? But wait, because it gets better. Because in the backyard, they find that passenger seat that's not in the car anymore. And baby, it is burnt, charred, looking like somebody tried real hard to make some evidence disappear. So they like, yeah, this whole situation is giving crime scene. Now, I said they done talk to T and they giving her a little reality check. They like basically like, look, you can cooperate and testify against your friend or you can go down with her. And she was like, you know what, say less. She like, look, me and Shantae went to Joe's Big Bamboo Club in Arlington, and she said on the way there, they were smoking, they were drinking, and at some point, they decided they were going to split a tab of ecstasy. So remember, Shantae told detectives earlier that she thought somebody slipped something in her drink, but funny how she forgot to mention that she took ecstasy willingly. So again, math ain't mathin'. So T says when they left the club, Shantae was like wasted, not like drunk. She said Shantae was white girl wasted. And T offered, like, girl, stay at my house, sleep it off. That's what real friends do. But Shantae says, no, I'm good. I can drive. Which, ma'am, that clearly was a lie. So T tells her, okay, girl, call me when you get home. I just want to make sure you're okay. Okay. So T gets a call from Shantae, but Shantae is whispering, panicking, talking about, girl, I need you to come get me. And like I say, being the good friend that T is, she didn't ask no questions. She just went. But when she got to Shantae's house and that girl walked in that garage and baby, she saw that man's body halfway in the windshield out that car, her reaction was like, I said, oh shit, so we need to call 911. Which, yes, that is the correct answer for 500, Alex. Gold star. But according to T, Shantae said no, she did not want to call 911. She did not want to call the police. Now, this is where T should have said, girl, move, and called anyway. But instead, she went into ride or die mode. I'm not that friend, for reference. I don't ride. I'm not dying. I got questions. Why I got to ride while we dying? I got trips to take. My passport waiting. I can't be going to jail. So, but everybody ain't like me, but hey. So, like we said, instead of calling for help, they're trying to go find this nigga Vaughn, driving around, calling his phone, trying to track this man down. And so, like I said, they gave up. They went back to T's house. They stayed there for the next night, and they really didn't talk about it again, for the most part. Like the night before didn't involve a whole man stuck in the windshield. It's just, business as usual. Now, the detectives are sitting there just like, so y'all really thought nobody was ever going to find out? Or how did y'all think this was going to go? So detectives, again, they're like, who the freak is this nigga named Vaughn? Because T saying Vaughn help. Everybody like Vaughn, Vaughn, Vaughn. So police are like, okay, cool. Who the hell is freaking Vaughn? They ain't got nothing. Nothing, no Vaughn, just crickets. So they like, all right, either somebody lying or somebody's using a fake name. Because criminals love doing that little move where they think they can change their name. And the police going to just like, oh, well, dang, I guess we'll never figure out that one. But they keep digging and they keep digging and they keep digging. And they actually end up getting a tip. But this man's name ain't Vaughn. His name was Cleet. Cleet Jackson. I can see why he changed his name, because what the hell kind of name is Cleet? That sounds country as hell. Now, this is my thing. Because, girl, you out here committing crimes, and you committing crimes to a man, you don't even know his real name. This whole time she's over here talking about my man, Vaughn. And they mean like, ma'am, you mean Cleet? She probably like, who's that? They show her a picture like, oh, yeah, that's my man. Baby, you don't even know that man's real name. Right? Okay. So before they even go pull up on Cleet, they go back and spin the block with Shantae one more time because, like I said, they've seen that car. They have seen the blood, the missing seat, the burnt seat. And they sit her down like, okay, now, are you sure you have nothing else you want to tell us? And she like, okay, maybe I left out a couple things. Girl, a couple, you think? Ma'am, that car looked like a Final Destination scene, and you talking about a couple things. So now she starts adding to the story. She said when she got home, like we said, when she was on the kitchen floor, just losing her mind, crying, rolling around the floor, child just in complete shambles. And then she admits that she kept running back out to the garage. And at one point, she was apologizing to Gregory. Yes, like, apologize. Like, I'm so sorry about that. This man is impaled in your windshield and you out here giving garage apologies? Be fucking for real. Then she runs back inside and she calls T. Now, eventually she gets in touch with her boyfriend, Vaughn, a.k.a. Cleet. And she calls him like, baby, I need help. It is an emergency. So she pulled that. This was like that day after. She had to go pick that man up because he probably ain't had no car. I need her to upgrade her standards. And she shows him that there's a man stuck in her windshield. And his response is like, oh shit. Which is, normal. But again, this is where a normal person would have said, no, I'm calling 911. I'm leaving. I don't know nothing about nothing. But not Cleet. Cleet decides the best move here is to start destroying evidence. The first thing he does, he starts ripping the seats about the car. Then they go out, they burn them in the backyard. This is not a cookout or a bonfire night. This is a crime scene. But then it gets dumber. I'm tired of y'all phoning friends. Like, what is going on with people phoning a friend in these murder cases? Like, again, don't call me. So he call up his cousin like, hey, I need you to help me come move a body. And the other person was like, yeah, like I'm down. Like, what time we doing it? Like, what type of friends do y'all have? So he calls his cousin Herbert Tyrone Cleveland. He sound country and hood at the same damn time. But imagine getting that call like, hey, bro, I need help moving a body. Get better friends expeditiously. Thank you. So the two of them, they end up pulling Gregory out of the windshield, wrap him up in a blanket, and drive to dump him off, which we now know was at Cop Park. And I just know them detectives was just sitting there like, so y'all really all just sat down and thought this was a good plan, huh? Yeah, that's what y'all thought. I would like to know how we arrived at this decision. Because every decision in this story is somehow worse than the one before it. So this man, Cleet, had a rap sheet longer than a CVS receipt. Like the man had just gotten out of jail. And when detectives pull up on him, it's basically like, sir, welcome back. Because from the looks of things, you're about to go back right where you came from. And he knew that. So he didn't waste no time. He just started spilling the beans because they offered him a deal. You know, if you testify against Shantae, you might get a lesser sentence. Now, suddenly he had a whole lot to say because according to Cleet, when Shantae called him, the girl came and picked him up. Like I said, girl, do better. We're committing felonies and I still got to go pick up my accomplice. That's my boyfriend. No. Okay, well, she was in her 20s. I got to give her some grace. I was there before. That was me picking up these men. But anyway, so she picks him up, brings him back to the house, and starts telling him what happened. She tells him that she hit a white man, thought he was dead, and she ain't know what she was gonna do. So instead of saying call the police or, maybe an ambulance, anybody but me, these two geniuses, and I use that word very sarcastically, decide to make a whole plan to get rid of the body and the evidence. So Clee says he actually went out to the garage and tried to shake Gregory to see if he was still alive. The man has been in this windshield for hours. Can you imagine? Okay. So Greg's body was lodged so tightly in the windshield like that. They said that Cleet couldn't move him by himself. So what does he do? Like I said, he called his cousin, Herbert Tyrone Cleveland, to come help. So when Herbert gets there, they pull him out the windshield. They wrapped his body up and they loaded him out. And he said during this whole time, he kept apologizing to Greg. Now listen, apologizing is nice, but sir, you are literally dumping this man's body in a park. And they drive away. And then they just forget about it. And I know the detectives are just sitting there thinking like, y'all made about 15 wrong decisions when one phone call could have changed everything. So at this point, arrest warrants start flying around like Oprah was giving out cars. You get a warrant. You get a warrant. Everybody gets a warrant. Now, the wild part is Shantae actually got arrested 3 different times, right? So the first time, police charged her with failing to stop and render aid, which, pretty much sounds like considering everything we just heard. So she posts bail, she gets out. About a week later, detectives came back with just full-on murder charges. So she's arrested again. But then they gave her a $10,000 bond, which is crazy on a murder charge. But now, literally 2 days after that, the judge must have, I don't know if it was a different judge or something, but he was like, yeah, absolutely not. And raised her bail to $250,000, which still to me is light for a murder trial. So she had to sit in jail because ain't nobody had that money. They wasn't about to keep coming bailing this girl out of jail. I don't blame them. So her trial ends up starting on June 23rd, 2003. Now, during the trial, like the defense tried to argue that this wasn't a murder. Like they really tried to lean into the idea that she just failed to stop and render aid. And even Shantae herself admitted, like, she deserved punishment, but she kept saying, I shouldn't be punished for the murder. Like, ooh. Girl. Now the prosecution, baby, they came to fight and they were not playing with this girl. When I tell you they literally took that car apart and brought pieces of it into the courtroom because they wanted the jury to see exactly what it was. They didn't want pictures. They wanted them to see exactly what happened. They were not playing. So Gregory's son, Brandon Biggs, took the stand. Her friend T testified. This is all for the prosecution. And, Cleet got up there, told his side of the story. When I tell y'all, that girl was up there hooing the whole damn trial, just boo hooing, just boo hooing, just boo hooing, girl. And they kept they kept saying that had she stopped and rendered aid, he would have survived. That was the kicker. The man would have survived. Because you have to think about it, like every time she stopped or like hit the brakes, it probably like that glass that he was impaled in, it went further, it damaged something else. He's twisting, he's turning, he's injuring himself more. And had you just stopped, he would have lived. But you kept going. And then you left him there for hours and he ended up bleeding out and dying. And yes, you would have gotten failed to render aid. Like she could have gotten off on 10 years. Yes, it's scary to go to jail. I get it. But you're staring at a man. You know he's alive because he's moaning. And you're so selfish that you don't even try to help him. And all you doing is and then you phoning people, getting other people involved in your bullshit is what's crazy to me. So anyway, the jury ends up coming back. They found this heifer guilty of murder, failure to stop and render aid, and concealing the death of another. Now, before sentencing, her parents spoke, her siblings spoke. They even went and got some former elementary school teachers. And I'm not trying to be funny. I get that before the penalty phase, they're trying to humanize you. But what are you doing? If she's 27 at this point, you calling her sixth grade teacher. Okay, that girl was a 12. What does that have to do with the person she is today? I get the reason they do it, but to me, it makes absolutely no sense. I don't. What does that have to do with today? What does that have to do with the person that she is today? I'm not the same person at 12 that I am at 39. What do you mean? I'm not even the same person I was 10 years ago. So like, what does that mean? To me, it means nothing. But that's what they do. Whatever. I just think that's so stupid. But anyway, the judge ends up handing her down a sentence of 50 years in prison. Right now, meanwhile, Cleet and his cousin Herbert were convicted for concealing the death. They got 9 and 10 years. Okay. Shantae is actually not due to be released until March 3rd of 2052. However, she is eligible for parole March 4th of 2027, which is actually, she has less than 365 days to go to see if she will be eligible to be released. And it was so nice that Brandon, his son, actually forgave her. Like he testified that he was like, hate is not going to make the situation better. And he forgave her on the stand. And he was like, everybody has lost in this situation. He's like, I lost my father. She's losing her life. Her parents are losing her. And after it was all over, Brandon did file a wrongful death suit against her, but it ended up being settled out of court. Just like that, one night of terrible decisions turned into decades behind bars. And that, my friends, is the story of Shantae Mallard. Now, let's be very clear about something. The accident itself, that could have happened to anybody. People hit animals, debris, people even hit people. But what most people do next is call for help. That's it. That's the whole assignment. Instead, this woman drove home with a man stuck in her windshield, parked in the garage, closed the door, and started forming a crime committee. Phoning a friend, calling boyfriends, burning car seats in the backyard like it's a Saturday night cookout. And the whole time, this man, Gregory Glenn Biggs, was a whole human who deserved help and not a cover up. One phone call could have changed everything. One moment of just being honest, one decision to say, damn, I messed up and I need help. But instead, a series of selfish, panicked decisions turned one bad night into a tragedy that ruined multiple lives. And that is the thing about bad decisions, because once you start stacking them, baby, they get real heavy, real fast. So I hope that you all enjoyed this episode of One Bad Night. This one was so wild to me on just so many levels. So many levels. You're dating a man, you don't even know his real name. Your best friend and testified against you. I wonder if they are still friends. I wonder about that. I don't know how I feel. Like, I get saving your ass, and I get that I dragged you into this, and I could have cost you years off your life. They probably ain't still friends. Nah, they probably ain't still friends. Well, that is the story, like I said, of Shantae Mallard. And this was one bad night. Ma'am, did you know there is a man stuck in your windshield? So sound off on wherever you hear this and let me know what you think about this case, because this was just freaking wild to me. And I am, like I said, I'm Tiffany, aka Detective Lightskin. I will catch y'all again in 2 more weeks for another episode.